SlimeVR drift is something that will inevitably be brought up when talking about slime, but what even is it? You may think of joystick drift, where a joystick thinks it's receiving an input even if it's not. Or maybe you think of the drift Vive trackers can get with a headset like a Quest, where they actually seem to be physically drifting away from you. SlimeVR's drift actually isn't like that at all. Although I wouldn't blame you for thinking that with the amount of people who have never used slime, acting like all your limbs will just magically fly away over time. In the context of SlimeVR trackers, drift is actually referring to rotational drift. This probably makes no sense if you don't know how slime works. How can a tracker not know how it's rotated? Isn't the whole point of one to, track something? For some, yes. These know exactly where they are at all times. SlimeVR, however, has absolutely no idea where it is. Slime trackers are IMU based, and while you can use IMUs to track relative position, SlimeVR doesn't. The only thing a SlimeVR tracker is monitoring is stuff related to its own rotation. Well, some can use magnetometers, but most don't. At first glance, knowing the rotation of 5 different things strapped to various locations on your body doesn't actually seem too useful. But in reality, it's extremely useful. If you've ever set up slimes, you know that before you can use them, the software needs to know your body proportions. It uses them to build a model skeleton of you. That skeleton, combined with the rotations of your trackers, can be used to try and calculate where your limbs actually are. This is why you need at least 5 trackers to get good tracking. It just wouldn't be worth the effort otherwise. So since the only thing being tracked is rotation, that's the only thing that can actually drift. You may think that just 1 or 2 trackers will end up rotated wrong and the rest will be fine, but the trackers actually work in sort of a chain. So just 1 tracker drifting can lead to some really weird stuff happening. The chest and hip trackers in specific are really important for tracking. This is why you shouldn't mix IMUs. All of them tend to have pretty similar precision. What varies is the drift times. If you have 4 that take an hour to drift and 1 that takes 5 minutes, it doesn't even make sense to have any of the good ones since you'll be recalibrating for the bad one anyways. In the rare event you actually might want to mix IMUs, there's 2 things you should do. 1, make sure that you're using IMUs with similar drift times, and 2, keep the IMUs you have the least of at the ends of any of your limbs. Speaking of recalibration, how hard is it anyways? Not. Once again, if you're familiar with Vive trackers on a Quest, you might think of the figure 8s you have to do for recalibration there. With SlimeVR, it couldn't be any more different. You just stand up, face forward, and double tap your chest tracker. That's it. If you find that your trackers are drifting a lot and you have to recalibrate frequently, you can try enabling drift correction, which applies an inverse rotation based on how often you're recalibrating and how far those trackers have drifted in that time. Don't let this drift scare you from getting a set of slimes, especially if everything you knew about it beforehand was from someone who needs the precision of Vives so I can sit on my ass in front of a mirror in VR chat all day. I personally find the drift on slimes to be more tolerable than the drift with Vives with non-Lighthouse headsets. However, there you can completely eliminate the drift by attaching an additional tracker to the headset. If that's not in your budget, or you just don't want to deal with it, then SlimeVR might be a better choice for you. The drift is a lot easier to recalibrate, there's more ways to fight against it, and you just look less freaky when recalibrating.